Good afternoon, everyone. Karen, hello.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here. Everyone else, welcome to today's session on Beyond the Tech, how award-winning firms build a culture of innovation. Today, I'm very happy to have Caryn Sandler, who is a partner and Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at Gilbert Tobin, talking to me all things innovation within law firms. Before I pass over to Caryn to introduce herself, I just wanted to cover off a few very brief housekeeping points for anyone who is new here. There will be a dedicated Q&A session at the end of my chat with Caryn. So if you do have any questions at all for her throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens to submit those, and then we'll make sure to get those addressed for you. Also, because I always get asked this session is being recorded and the on-demand recording will be made available to you in the next couple of days. So just keep an eye out on an email from Practice Evolve for that. And finally, we hope you enjoy the webinar. Caryn, I'd love for you to just provide a little bit of background, professionally, where you've come from, how you got to Gilbert and Tobin, just for anyone who might not have heard you speak before.
Absolutely, thank you. So obviously Caryn Sandler, I'm a partner and Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer here at Gilbert and Tobin. My background is I was a practicing M&A and equity capital markets lawyer, both in the Australian market as well as in the UK market. I lived in London for a bit of time, returned back to Australia. I actually had my first child and I decided that probably the hours weren't conducive to, doing motherhood really well and then also doing my M&A work really well. So I went into a knowledge related role, and actually that was at Gilbert and Tobin, so knowledge management. So I was a senior lawyer providing support to many of our partners and lawyers within the corporate team, in respect of precedents and advice on particular matters as well. And then I suppose the world changed. Innovation became a thing in sort of 2015, 16. I had worked on a number of tech products to optimize the delivery of some of our corporate related work. And that's where I find myself today. So certainly not by design, more about falling into innovation, but it's been a great sort of 12-year journey now.
Yeah, definitely a lot of expertise under your belt, that's for sure. And I actually wanted to start off the conversation by having you define what innovation actually means, particularly in the context of the legal operations.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting question because I think too often people fall into the trap of defining innovation as technology, and I think it is anything but that. In fact, I often say to deliver an innovation, you need three things. You need people, process, and technology. And I would arguably say that if you don't have the people component right and the mindset right, you can't deliver on the technology component. So that's just an enabler. So for me, innovation is quite broad. It's probably about delivering better outcomes, faster, smarter, and in ways that create tangible value. And I think the value piece is incredibly important because there's no point in innovating for the sake of innovating. You need to innovate to create some form of value. So I suppose in the context of legal operations, it means rethinking the way in which we deliver our legal services to make sure that we deliver them using technology, streamlined processes, data-informed decision-making, and I think collaborative multidisciplinary teams as
Mm.
well. Mm.
And I think the key phrase that you mentioned there is tangible value. That might be the tricky part
Yes,
for when
indeed.
moving in that direction. And we will get into that actually down the line. But before we do, I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper into, I guess, the interest and like the person that is Caryn Sandler. So you've led Gilbert and Tobin to multiple innovation awards. What first sparked your interest in legal innovation and what continues to motivate you today?
It's a great question. As I said earlier, certainly in my career, I would be lying if I said to you that it was by design. It was absolutely not by design. But one thing, when I was at university, I studied law and I studied business. And one thing that was always clear to me was I had a very keen interest in how you build businesses, how you think about continuous improvement. I think that was just, innate to me, but also in terms of the marrying of law as well as business. That was really a fundamental piece for me. So I've always had an interest in it. And really, I work now on the business side of law. It's the business of law.
Mhm.
So for me, it was really the marrying of that together. And, I was very fortunate in that my career landed in that position. It's probably the reason why I stand up doing M&A law, because I was always interested in business and law. I actually, when I was a knowledge lawyer, I worked on a due diligence platform. And for me, it was about, integrating the legal knowledge as well as the actual operational side of things. So how do we streamline the actual processes? And I really enjoyed that, more so than I ever thought I actually would. And that's in that spirit of sort of continuous improvement. And I think, as I said, that's probably fundamental to me as a person. I always look at, like, how can we continually improve things? How do we continually learn? How do we do things better? In terms of what continues to motivate me, I think, particularly with the advancements in generative AI, we are at a really interesting, part of, the sort of delivery of legal services. Like, things are going to change enormously over the next few years. It is incredibly exciting. There's lots to get done, but I think we have some really interesting ways to change the way in which we can deliver legal services to better the profession. And that keeps me completely excited.
Yeah, I suppose that's the key to the whole term of innovation, the concept of innovation. It's continuing to evolve, whereas, you're not going to be stagnant. There's always a new technology, a new process, a new way of doing things, which it sounds like definitely keeps you
Absolutely.
on this very exciting track. So my next
Absolutely. And I
question.
think the one thing I say is just, as I said, the pace of change is
Yeah.
just so fast. And I think we're at a really interesting intersection of the ability to help shape what the future of law looks like. And I think that is incredibly exciting. And for me personally, like, being able to potentially make a real difference as to how we deliver legal services, how we engage our clients. I mean, that is incredibly energizing.
Absolutely. My next question, Caryn, I'm sure many of us would like to know, I certainly do, but I would really love to know what a typical day looks like for you. And are there any habits that help keep you and your team ahead of the curve, motivated, inspired?
Oh, it's a great question. And I can tell you there is no typical day. And even when I think that my day might be typical, or that it is very structured based on the meetings I have, invariably there are things that come in which completely derail it. So, there is no typical day. I spend a lot of my time in meetings, both internal meetings and with clients. But typically the day involves a mix of sort of strategic planning, project delivery, client engagement, team management, and then just staying across the many trends that exist within legal technology and more broadly innovation as well. So, it is very busy and very varied. I have unfortunately not yet been able to work out how best to manage my diary. I even try keep blocks of time and they invariably get taken very quickly. So, it is very sort of changeable at a moment's notice as well. But, we spend a lot of time engaging with our stakeholders. I think that is incredibly fulfilling. We work with them to understand their problems deeply. We help them with the technology, and that's on the internal side. And obviously, we do a lot of work from a client perspective in helping in-house teams transform. So I spend a lot of time sort of working in that space. And obviously, I have quite a large, diverse team. So just working with people internally within the team. And I think when you talk about, what are the habits that keep the team ahead of the curve, I never like to say that we're ahead of the curve because I think we always have to maintain momentum. And I think complacency is a very dangerous thing. But, that focus is important. We don't assume that that is the case, and we are hopefully never complacent. But we collaborate exceptionally well as a team. I think culture is incredibly important to me, and more broadly within the team. We pull on people's diverse skill sets, which makes our delivery, I hope, very good. And that's been quite unique to the way in which we've had our team structured, because we have a number of teams that sit within the broader G&T Innovate team. And that actually means that we can assemble the right skill set for the right task. And so we might need somebody from legal project management. We might need somebody from our knowledge team, our transformation team, and data. And we can pull all those skill sets together to get those diverse perspectives, which hopefully result in a better outcome. In terms of also, just the team and habits, it's all about restless energy. That is the foundation for G&T as well. It's something we think and we focus on very heavily, and it comes from leadership down. But, we always want to push boundaries, and those are the habits and the way we think about things. We're constantly looking at new technologies. Even when we've rolled out new technologies, we're looking at what might be next. And that helps us, keep atop of what is going out there in a very fast-paced environment.
This is a bit of a rogue question, but for someone who's got such a meeting-heavy diary, do you have any tips on how to keep these meetings productive? Because we've all attended meetings that don't have an agenda, that seem to be in your diary for the sake of it. And I know for lawyers especially, who are so busy, you just want to make sure that anything that you dedicate your time to is actually, valuable.
It's a really interesting question, and I'm always torn. I'm a bit torn sometimes, because to be completely productive, you go in there with a very fixed agenda, and you know exactly what you want to get as an output from that particular meeting. And I do definitely focus on that. But I also like to think that if we're going to have meetings, that's actually when we can personally engage with other people. And I think we can't forget the human elements, the fact that you might want to spend the first couple of minutes seeing how people are doing, and how their weekends might be. I think that's just the basics of being human. So I try and balance, ensuring that those meetings do deliver those outcomes. And for example, I've recently started, I catch up with a number of my direct reports on a weekly basis. And I've started now sending an email on Friday saying, unless we have something new to discuss, let's cancel out the meeting, so that we're not making, having meetings for the sake of having meetings. But again, I do think we need to always remember that meetings also serve a purpose of keeping people connected, and that helps develop culture as well.
I love that you say that, because our last month's speaker, Simon Tupman, so he talked to leadership. And one of the key points that he made is the sign of a good leader is having that personal connection with the people that you work with, even if it's literally just asking them about their weekend. And I was personally surprised at how often that maybe doesn't happen in certain environments. So
Yeah.
testament to you. I mean, 60 plus, team of 60 plus people. So you have to stay across a lot of a lot of people's weekends.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's dig into this a little bit further. So in our previous chats, you have mentioned that embedding innovation into DNA of the firm is key. So in your opinion, what does a genuine culture of innovation actually looks like? And what are the signs that the firm is on the right track?
Yeah. I should start by saying this takes time to develop. When I reflect back, I've been in this role since about 2015, 16. So, we're going on 10 years. It takes time and it takes intentional commitment and effort to really embed a culture of innovation or DNA, innovation into the DNA of a firm. I was very fortunate in that G&T has always been an innovative firm. It has that culture from the top. So there is real support for innovation in everything we do, not just in the team, like in my team, but in the way we deliver legal services, the way we think about engaging with our clients. And that has been part of what our founder Danny Gilbert has ingrained within the culture. So I started with a really good base, and there has been that ongoing support. But I think when I talk about it being in the DNA, it's when innovation stops being a side project or something that people have to think about in their work, but becomes integral as to how people think about their work every day. So, there's lots of signs for that, whether it be how, partners bringing ideas to us, of which it happens, juniors bringing ideas to us and thinking about how we can work together, lawyers collaborating with my team. But there is also, I think this is the most important, is I obviously have a team that supports our lawyers, and that has been really fundamental to the way in which we have embedded innovation. But what we've been really pushing is that innovation is everyone's role. It cannot just be my team's role, because it's about the lawyers and the way in which they operate as well, having a common language and wanting to embed it in their work as well. So I think that's when I talk about DNA, that's what I mean, that everyone has a responsibility of innovation. Everyone has that responsibility to push boundaries, to continuously improve and buy into that sort of mantra of we will do things in the best possible way.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the flip side, what do you think are some of the obstacles that perhaps might prevent firms from having a
Yeah,
culture?
and these are often talked about. People talk about, the way in which partnerships are structured. Often it can be lack of leadership buy-in. As I said, I've been very fortunate in that we've had enormous buy-in from both our leadership as well as our broader partnership. Busy lawyers can be a really big obstacle, and we found that at times. Lawyers are incredibly busy. They are often on matters that have very tight deadlines. They have very, very busy days, and asking them to then think about how they can do things differently or to experiment with a technology where the benefits might not be immediately realized, because, there always is a time period in which people need to experiment, find something, doing something new, which takes sometimes a bit extra time, and then you deliver the benefits later on. But getting people over that hurdle when they have so much going on can be quite an impediment, I have found, to innovation within law firms. I think the other thing is how we talk about failure in law firms and experimentation. I think the natural tendency for lawyers is perfectionist, and we want to get things right straight away. I think the journey for innovation, and often when I do a number of speaking pieces at conferences, I've got a slide over there that shows, people often think that innovation is linear, but I've put a slide in there that just shows like a squiggly line. It's up and down, it's everything. We do things that work, sometimes we do things that don't work. And I think if people don't necessarily feel that mistakes are tolerated, that we can do things that don't always deliver a great outcome, I think that can be damaging to innovation within law firms. And we've tried really hard to have that psychological safety around innovation, to really push innovation, knowing that not everything is going to work and we might not get the best benefits out of things, but we learn through that journey. And I think that is actually critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And making some of these operational changes does take a shift in mindset. What role does leadership play in making changes actually stick across the law firm?
So I feel very passionately about this. I think leadership plays the most enormous role in setting that tone for innovation within organizations. If firm leaders model curiosity, openness to change, and that bias for action, you will see that cascading down through the organization. And we've certainly seen this at GNT. It was interesting. I was just at a couple of, there's been a few AI summits the last couple of days in Sydney, and I listened to some of the CEOs of some of our largest companies in the Australian market talk about this. And it was so interesting to see how they were leveraging AI in their day-to-day. And that absolutely sets the tone for the way this actually will evolve within their organization. So no doubt an important aspect to that shift in sort of mindset and ingraining that innovation culture within an organization.
Yeah. I already mentioned that you lead a multidisciplinary team of 60 plus. What are some practical tactics that help align the partners, the fee earners, and other business teams that actually help drive change?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I lead the GNT Innovate team. It is a large team. It's made up of knowledge and practice innovation, which is traditionally the knowledge management team, but obviously with a heavy focus on leveraging technology and new ways of working to deliver knowledge in new ways. Project management, legal technology and transformation. We've got our data science team that sits within that team, our legal informatics team, which is the team that really focuses on large-scale e-discovery or, document review for large-scale regulatory and disputes, as well as our service delivery center. So there are lots of different disciplines in there. Some are lawyers by background, now are, very much in the transformation space. We've got project managers by background. We've got, technologists by background, obviously data scientists by background. So a variety of interdisciplinary sort of skills. What I would say to you is that I think, particularly given the complexity of the world in which we deliver legal services, it takes a number of different skill sets now to deliver legal services. So the way we align things is we've, as I said, built the team over a number of years, but we've also built that sort of understanding within the broader organization as to what the team does and where they should come to them for support. So, historically, lawyers might have struggled with something or thought that there was no potential option to redesign a particular process. Now they know, they come to my team and we can then triage that and send it to the people who have the best skill set to, work with the lawyers in that space. So for me, it is around that co-design piece and really starting with all the relevant stakeholders in the room early to drive that real change. And sometimes that means, it's my team working with our lawyers. Sometimes we bring in somebody from the BD marketing team because there is an external client piece in there. Sometimes we always work with IT. I mean, IT and my team work hand in glove because obviously, a lot of what we do involves technology and we need to make sure there are the right robust sort of processes around security and reviewing that technology and diligence more broadly. So again, for us, it is really around building that trust and translating that into sort of that language of value.
Yeah, that's it. Can you talk us through a framework or an approach that your team uses to roll out a transformation project at Gilbert Tobin?
Yeah, so obviously we've rolled out a number of them. We generally follow a number of steps, and it doesn't matter what project that we are doing. We tend to focus on those steps, and also when we work with our clients, it's not dissimilar in the way in which we focus on these steps. We might just call it slightly different things, but effectively, and this is probably the most important thing, is there needs to be a discovery phase. You need to be able to understand your problem deeply. I feel very passionately about this. I've had historically, over my 10 years of practicing in this space, people coming to me and saying, "Oh, Caryn, we've rolled this out and the technology doesn't work." This is when I'm working with external clients or, something just hasn't got us there. And typically what we find is that there hasn't been enough investment in that understanding that problem phase. We need to deeply understand the problem or the opportunity that exists, because if we don't understand where the problem is and go back to basics, we actually often employ solutions that do not actually meet the needs of the users. So whether, you apply a design thinking frame and ask, framing, and you ask like, why, like, why do you have that problem? Why do you have that problem? Because you then get to like, really, what are we talking about as to where is the pain point rather than the superficial pain point? So we spend a lot of time in that discovery phase and process mapping phase and identifying the pain points and understanding the pain points with our users. We would then think about, well, like, what does then the future state look like? What does that design look like of how do we co-create what would be a better sort of future state? Often it does involve technology. It doesn't always involve technology. It might just be a process change. It might be that you put better project management capability in a particular sort of, process. But if it does involve technology, we would go to market, we would look at technology, we would see whether actually it solves the pain point we are actually looking for. And then we go through quite a rigorous sort of, due diligence process, making sure the technology meets all our stringent sort of security controls. And then we would move into a pilot phase. I think that is always a very good idea because you can experiment with a small group. You often find that there is lots of things that need to change between the pilot and the rollout. We then make the call in terms of whether actually we would bring in that technology, and obviously looked at a number of different technologies, roll it out. And I think this is where a lot of people make a mistake, in that we think all that process that I've just mentioned, like all the way from discovery to the rollout, is where the hard work is. It's actually not. It's after that. So you need to engage your stakeholders. You need to do the change management. We pretty much bring in SaaS products these days. So there is a significant roadmap of updates. So functionality and features, as you would know, change enormously on a almost like now weekly basis when it comes to AI. So there is that continuous change management and, rollout phase beyond the initial rollout. You can have upgrades of systems. We've got a due diligence product internally. I think we're on the 18th version of that. So I think, you need to do that. And then we always measure the outputs as well. So we try get a baseline early on in the pilots to understand what does the current state, or what does the current state look like, and what might the future state look like in terms of this rollout, and what, what ROI can we expect, and we will then continually manage that.
Yeah, in terms of the ongoing change management, is that your team's responsibility?
Yes, it is. We sort of do the end to end. That's just the way we are sort of structured. But yes, we do, and we work with our lawyers, and we see what might need to change and how we need to take that feedback back to the vendors, or if we're deploying it in or developing it internally, our own data science as well as development teams internally as well. But yes, we absolutely do. And, that's been years of experience that my team has built with the lawyers, and there is that level of trust, and there is that really good engagement as well.
Yeah. The next question I've got for you is actually come from an audience member. So of all of the innovations that your team has implemented, which has had the most meaningful impact, and why?
It's a hard one, but can I maybe give you two? I'll give you two because they're a bit different. One for me was off the back of COVID. Obviously we had so many people out of the office. There was a very new way of working, and people during that time were obviously very focused on really using the tech for its core capability, whether it be video calls, and people were obviously not co-located typically, and running innovation in those in that type of environment can be quite tricky. So we wanted to reset everything when we got back to the office and everyone started coming back in, and we ran something called the Ways of Working project. And we did an entire diagnostic and understood exactly where the pain points were. Things had changed a lot during COVID as well. So what were existing pain points in the way in which some of our lawyers worked looked a bit different off the back of COVID. So we redid this. We put together a model as to what best practice looks like at G&T. And we basically rolled out an entire program around ways of working. It was, it had a lot of design around it, and we had things all over the floors in the office. And it was a very engaging campaign. And that was really at the heart of it. We wanted to engage people again. We wanted people to really think about how they can follow a very simplistic, there was like a 4-stage model, a very simplistic model, and think about that every single time they did their work. So, stop and plan, and how do we continuously innovate, and how do we demonstrate leadership ourselves? And so there were lots of elements to it. We ran a real campaign and training sort of campaign around, what this all looked like and how we needed them to model this within G&T. And I must say, it was something that I'm very proud of. There were a lot of people that contributed to it in the G&T Innovate team and more broadly as well. And it was really focused on all the behaviors that we need for innovation and that change management and that innovation within our DNA. And the reason why it strikes me as one of the significant innovations within the firm is shortly after that, we had Gen AI land. And I think what it did for us is it really set the foundations around how we need to have the right mindsets and behaviors and think about our work and continuously improving our work, that when Gen AI landed, that was just the technology that supported that broader initiative. So the second one for me would be the Gen AI program. We've been very busy for the last couple of years on embedding our Gen AI strategy and, everything that went with it. And the reason why for me it is such a important and significant, I suppose, innovation is the level of engagement across so many people within the organization that this Gen AI strategy requires is enormous. Like, I have been doing this for a while now. We've often needed different parts of the business, but never before have you needed risk, Office of General Counsel, lawyers who are practicing in the space, because you need to consider sort of copyright and privacy implications and confidentiality. You need your tech team. You need new ways of thinking, new ways of working, partner steering committees, data scientists. It is the most interesting sort of multidisciplinary approach to technology rollout that I have ever seen before. So for me, that's another one, because I feel like we've done that quite successfully. There's still so much to learn, so much to do, but bringing together the right skill sets and making sure we have the right involvement at all the right levels has been critical.
You mentioned a couple of times in your answer that it's critical to have the right mindsets and behaviors in people. Could you give me an example, maybe a couple of those, or what's the most important, behavior or mindset that you think?
I think the most important, there's obviously, the concept of a fixed versus a growth mindset. And we talk about at G&T this concept of a transformational mindset. We want to look at everything we do with the lens of, are we doing it in the best way possible, or is there a better way to do it? So that requires a breakdown of processes. But what it really does is it makes people continually think, can I do this better? And that's the mindset we want, that view of continuous improvement. It is embedding it into the way in which we work. And that was the heart of the Ways of Working initiative. But you need to build on this stuff. And the only way, you can't just move, if people have a fixed mindset, for example, you can't just move to a growth mindset. You need to challenge yourself and take time and effort. And I think we absolutely need to do that in the context of this generative AI wave, because it is fundamentally going to change the way every lawyer practices.
All right, well, let's get into Gen AI, because we did have a few questions come through on that. So, and AI is everywhere, as you mentioned, probably the last year and a half, every single conference that we've attended, that was the main speaking point. But it's not always applied meaningfully. And I think right about now, maybe the mindsets are changing a little bit, where instead of being scared of what it could mean for people specifically and like replacing jobs, where I think people are coming on board with this might actually not replace my role, but enhance the way that I'm working, right? So how is G&T using AI in practice right now? And where do you see it maybe not adding value?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say to you, I think we have to go back to the basics still with generative AI. I think there is risk because there is so much talk out there, and there is so much, and I'm not necessarily going to call it hype, because I do think this is going to be enormously transformative. And I think even if we reflect back on 2-3 years ago to where we are now, I don't think people quite realize the level of transformation that is going to happen. Whether we are overestimating what might happen in the short term, possibly, but I think we are underestimating what potentially might happen in the long term. So, but I will go back to basics over here, because I think one needs to think about this in a very thoughtful way and not be too caught up in what's sort of going out and all the noise. And that is really, really hard. But you need to bring in AI to solve problems. There is no point in just using AI for the sake of it. So I think we go back to basics and go back to what I mentioned when I talked about, like, what does our process look like, and that discovery phase. When we, very early on, I think it was April 2023, we actually put out to the firm a bounty. It was an AI bounty. And we asked everyone within the firm, both on the legal and operational side, to identify areas that they might think AI can assist, or Gen AI can assist. And we got 106 submissions. And we had a number of winners off the back of that. And we've been slowly building out and selecting technology to deal with those particular pain points. But I mentioned that not because obviously it was a fun thing to do. It was a fun thing to do. But I mentioned that more so because I think you have to start with, what is the problem you are trying to solve, rather than AI is an instrument that can be used absolutely on everything. I do think the difference between AI, though, is that there is a lot of ground up innovation. So I think you need to get it into your hands of your people, and that is where they actually find those opportunities, rather than that top down, which sort of says, well, this is how we should be using it. Experimentation becomes absolutely critical. We have found use cases in so many different areas. We are very fortunate. We went through very aggressive piloting of a variety of different technologies, both on the legal and the operational side of things. We have rolled out a number of different technologies, including Harvey being rolled out to all of our lawyers in February of this year. And we, on a daily basis, are working out areas in which we can use it. But things like summarization, obviously key, getting insights into documents, data extraction, they are really good use cases, very large scale discovery, and again, getting insights into that. On the operational side of things, there have been an enormous amounts of areas where people have been able to use it, even simply drafting emails. We underestimate how many emails we do on a day-to-day basis. So if you break down your day, and try work out where you can actually enhance that. Our BD marketing teams, get insights into many of our clients, annual reports, what the recent financials are, things that would have taken historically a long period of time, prepping for meetings, getting an understanding of who you are meeting, lots of really great use cases in that regard. In areas that we are a bit mindful, we've got very strict governance controls, and we have a responsible use of AI policy that we've launched to everyone within the firm. And, we have very clearly said to everyone they have to review all outputs of AI. I mean, there's no doubt we still see hallucinations, and we need to ensure that obviously whatever we're putting out to our clients is accurate. Areas that we are not very focused on yet at the moment is research across legal. We've certainly seen some of the benchmarking reports that don't necessarily produce the best outputs at the moment when it comes to very nuanced legal analysis and research. So we see very much the sweet spot, like extraction of data, getting insights, but that very analytical review of laws, particular complex legal problems, etc. It might be an input into that, but again, we are being cautious around those particular use cases.
Yeah, very much needs a human lens on
Correct.
that.
And we think that across everything. Like, we think that there is a human in the loop. We certainly subscribe to sort of Ethan Mollick's thinking, human in the loop in everything we do. So our lawyers know everything needs to be reviewed off the back of AI.
Yeah. Confidentiality is a big concern with AI tools. Another audience question for you, Caryn. How do you ensure client data is protected when testing or implementing these new technologies?
Yeah, so obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we've got robust governance frameworks with very strict access controls. And obviously, we've got risk assessments and vendor assessments as well of any AI tool that we might want to bring into G&T. There is an absolute moratorium on putting any confidential data into public AI systems. So like the likes of ChatGPT, off the table when it comes to confidential data, because obviously we don't know what they are doing with the data, and they may be using the data to train underlying AI systems. So anything we bring into the organization has gone through those very strict sort of security and governance controls. We would not train on the underlying data. And the beauty of this is that there are so many products out there that actually afford those controls. We are also, we have a number of other, not to get into the weeds, but we have a number of clients that are still on an excluded list. So they do not want us, based on their terms and conditions, to use generative AI on any of their data. And that is an ongoing conversation that we have with those clients. But there is definitely, so our lawyers need to check that excluded list before they actually roll out the technology. And the other thing I would say on that is this moves and changes daily. So it's about being agile in the way in which we deal with this. But again, we would not compromise anything from a confidentiality point of view.
Just going back to those three pillars you mentioned around innovation, which is the process, people, and technology.
Yeah.
This ties into another audience question that we got, which is, how are you actually developing AI skills across your legal teams? Because obviously any technology is as good as the people that use it or behind it.
Yeah.
So what's working? What are some of the challenges? What are the skill sets that you're implementing into the teams?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. And I do feel very passionately about this, because I do think the secret to success is actually the capability build. And as I mentioned to you, I'd been to these two recent conferences, and everything and all the dialogue was about how do we build the skills that are necessary for the future workforce. That needs to be at the heart of every L&D program within corporate organizations. So we've been building this for a number of years. So we've got obviously a number of pathways in the firm, which historically really focused on like legal related skills. So we would train people at all the different levels in the areas of law that they might need. And then we added on to that, all the human skills that one needs as well. What is it to be a good leader, etc. About 2.5 years ago or so, we launched the innovation and legal technology pathway. So all lawyers at different levels need to go through particular training as it relates to their roles, which assist with them developing the right skills around innovation and legal technology, and to be able to have those conversations and to know where to go to ask for help. We've got, we do it through a lot of different mechanisms. I don't think only through training. We do it through, like, we've got a G&T Innovate Hub where people can go to and get the latest and greatest information. We've got an AI hub again. We put out weekly AI bites to our people in our firm, giving them insights as to how we can use technology and sharing those success stories as well. We do it in practice group meetings. So we come at it from a number of different angles. It's not just training, but this is the most critical thing. And I will say, in the context of AI, the best way to train your people is to let them experiment with the technology, because actually you identify those use cases by experimenting with the technology, rather than being told how to use the technology. It's, like anything, if you give people the opportunity to do it, that's where they learn the most. So for us, it's been a combination of upskilling, and we've had a number of different sessions, and we give people insight into what's happening more broadly in the Gen AI world, for example, and the technology world as well, not only as it relates to legal, but we have that real focus on putting the hands in the tools of our people to enable those outcomes.
Yeah.
But that is a journey, and that takes time and effort. And it is not lost on me that, not everyone has the resources to do that. What I would say is that people should look to the market for a number of resources out there. There is so much content. I mean, I am the co-chair of the Centre for Legal Innovation, College of Law, and they've got amazing content that gets put out on a weekly basis. Again, the law societies are doing some really good work in the space. There is lots of areas people can tap into, because I do appreciate that not everyone has teams like mine who can assemble this training, deliver this training, but we do need to upskill everyone. And I think the aim is not that my team, and this is how we've always looked at it, not that my team does the work for our lawyers, that we enable them to be the best that they can possibly be. We develop them in project management skills so that they themselves can deliver project management well on their matters, and they can plan really well. They can use the technology and are enabled, and that takes a bit of time. They might not have those skills initially, but that is the aim.
Okay. Before I get to my last two questions, I just want to encourage anyone on the call to please submit your questions if you have any for Caryn now. But Caryn, if you could give a meaty firm one sort of no regrets innovation play for the next 12 months, what would it be?
I would say, if you can, invest in AI technology in whatever form it is. See what integrates within your existing technology stack, or how you can bolt it on as an additional module or capability, and get the tech in the hands of your lawyers. That is the way I think, like, just start now. I think we worry too much sometimes around all the risks, etc. This is coming at a pace that we've never seen before, and the importance of playing with it, understanding its use cases, trying to work out how to embed it into your day-to-day will become, in my view, critical. And I think, we're already sort of 3 years in, and this is not stopping.
And just off the back of your earlier comment about maybe not every firm would have the resources to dedicate to, have a dedicated innovation team. What would you do, like, if you were to join into like a smaller law firm and you had to start driving those innovation conversations or strategies? How would you approach it?
I think, again, I would start at the basics. I would start at, where are the opportunities that would deliver the most ROI for your organization? And I think, depending on the types of work those organizations do, there would be repeat work that is done at a very frequent level. The worst thing to do, in my view, is to apply technology to a process that happens once a year or twice a year, because it might be the easier one to get over the line. You need the frequency. You need to understand, those processes that deliver a lot of revenue or business for your actual sort of law firm. So I would go in, I would look at those ones, I would optimize them. I would look at how best we can build your data capability, because I think data is ultimately going to fuel the AI journey. And then, as I said, I would move into the AI side of things.
And who would you say should be responsible for driving that project or that change? Would it be the
Yeah.
partner? Would it be the everyone that
Yeah.
does the work day today, a mix?
Yeah. So it's a really interesting one. I think, historically people have put together, and we've done it as well, where you've got like innovation champions. People have knowledge teams. I think that is a really good source of talent in organizations, and many law firms do still have knowledge those people that are focusing on sort of knowledge management. I think the other thing I would say is you do need to find people maybe who can champion this. But if there is potential headcount to bring in somebody who can focus their attention on innovation, I think that is almost what it demands at the moment. It is very difficult to do this on the side of your desk. I think that is the biggest challenge people have, is if we add it on to X's role, but X is already 100% busy, that is a very difficult thing. This takes time, effort. It requires skill in a particular area that not everyone has. So they have to either build that, or alternately, you need to bring in people who actually have that skill and capability. So I think you do need somebody who can take responsibility for this. Maybe there's somebody already in the operational side of the business. Maybe there's a lawyer who has a keen interest in this and would prefer to move into a secondment, for example, into this particular area. I think if you think creatively around where the talent sits and who has an interest, I think actually people would find it easier than, what they currently see as almost blocks in those areas.
Yeah, right. All right, this is my last question to you, I promise. Um, could you please complete this sentence for me? So 5 years from now, the most innovative law firm will.
That's a hard one. Okay. All right. So 5 years from now, and it's interesting because 5 years from now, I think might even land up being, let's say, 3 years from now, because things are moving so quickly. But I would say 5 years from now would be the firm that reimagines the role of a lawyer, that integrates technology seamlessly and AI into general service delivery, and continues to deliver on the core purpose of what we do in providing outstanding legal advice.
Fantastic. Thank you, Caryn, for that. We have actually got quite a few audience questions that have come through. So let me just open that up.
Okay.
And perfect. We've got just under 10 minutes to get through them. How do you grow a team from the start when there are limited people, resources, and not an established budget or significant technology resources?
Okay. So that's a great question. I would say what I mentioned earlier around, I think there potentially could be opportunities to repurpose somebody internally, somebody who has a keen interest. I will say somebody must have a keen interest in this area to actually be successful in this area. It is a very different skill set to maybe traditional law or other vocations, and you do need to develop that skill set. You do need to have a keen interest in that skill set. And I would be confident that irrespective of the size of an organization, there probably will be people in there that actually have a keen interest in this area or follow, but you need to discover those people and almost uncover them within the actual organization. So I would say that. I think, as I said before, you can start up a group of sort of innovation champions. People within the organization or in the, within the sort of lawyer cohort that, again, have a keen interest in this and would be willing to devote time and energy to it. And if you can, if you don't have dedicated budget for this, if you can at least assemble a group that have a real focus on this, that's the first start to that change, because then that might change over time, in that you might be able to get budget, or you might see there is return on investment based on, people advocating for it, which means you might be able to go out there and, deliver that case for, can you have a headcount for this particular area? So again, it's about, I think, looking for enthusiastic people who are focused on innovation. Many people coming out of university at the moment have been exposed to it to some degree. They do have a keen interest. They have no tolerance for doing things in archaic ways. Tap into those people in the organization.
Yeah. A question from Joel for you. How will law firms capture value if time-based pricing becomes less relevant due to delivery of time savings enabled by Gen AI?
So, I mean, this is obviously the million-dollar question. So thank you, Joel, for asking this one. I think all law firms who are currently time-based in pricing will need to rethink the way in which they, deliver value to their clients, and also how they reap reward for that. I think it's probably fair to say, whilst a lot of organizations still do have billables and sort of time recorded billables, there are often fixed fees that exist already today, or there are caps. So it's not completely accurate to say it's purely only time-based. But this is the journey for most organizations who are currently heavily invested in AI. It's certainly our journey. We are trying to work out what pricing will look like, how do we continue to deliver value for our clients, what that will do to the billable hour, and how we need to rethink that. It is a bit difficult at the moment, and the reason I say that is because the ROI is not absolutely clear yet on the AI. There's a huge amount of fact checking that needs to exist, and there are certain processes that will benefit from AI more so than other processes. So it's trying to bring it together and work out what is the best way for us to deliver that to clients, and how best to be remunerated for that investment. But I think we will find a way. But again, it's not the easiest way. It's not an easy solution. There isn't an easy solution. I've spoken to people globally on this. No one has the answers yet, but we are all on the journey trying to find out what that will be.
Yeah. Your next question is from Shaveen. What automations have you seen in legal teams that you think are highly efficient or game-changing?
So I think this very much depends on the areas in which people practice. So different, obviously, law firms and legal teams and in-house teams, for that matter, focus on different areas. So historically, areas like document automation, if you are churning out a lot of documents on a regular basis, there was lots of upside to that. I know a number of teams have been experimenting with playbooks as well. So whether you can do an NDA playbook, you can put the NDA into a system that has the embedded playbook and work out whether you need to send back track changes or accept their edits, or whatever that looks like. Again, I think this is all changing, to be honest, now, because AI is so capable across so many different areas. So it's about really, again, looking at the various use cases, looking at the various problems that people have within an organization, or pain points, and applying the technology in the right ways. But obviously, another one with automations, not so much automations, but in large scale document review, I mean, areas like, products like Nuix and Relativity, and those products that have been focused on large scale document review have delivered enormous benefits to organizations. I mean, you couldn't easily review millions and millions of documents, and to be able to narrow that down to a manageable set for review has been enormously, sort of powerful. The other area I would say is, as it relates to AI, I actually think the AI is very good at the moment at extraction of data. That's something that we historically have not always seen. So contract reviews and extracting the key data for the lawyers to then go and review and understand what the impact might be on their matter or transaction. Again, I think they will deliver great benefit over the next few years.
Thank you. And we've got 2 minutes for one final question. Would you recommend a small team to review processes and facilitate communications between lawyers and the tech team for implementing changes, continuous improvement, and innovation? Okay,
I have to read that again. So
yes.
Would you recommend a small team to review processes and facilitate communication between lawyers and the tech team for implementing? Absolutely. So I think inherently people actually know where pain points exist within an organization. We went through a number of processes over the last 10 years. They were large scale processes, but actually I didn't you don't need to go through granular levels of process mapping, etc. I think you can get insights quite quickly, and I think that's often misunderstood. So when I say review processes, you don't need to be intensively reviewing processes. High level, identifying the pain points and then seeing what you might be able to do, I think is actually sufficient. But what I would say is to implement change and continuous improvement, you need to bring the right people alongside your journey. So absolutely, I would say you want to engage with the tech team because they're going to be critical if you are bringing in any technology. If you've got a learning team, you might have some change management expertise in there. There's lots of different people. I think if you look in your organization to find the right skill set, you probably will find there are people in there that have skill sets that you never knew existed, and bringing them together will deliver good outcomes.
All right, well, thank you so much for that, Caryn. And thank you for our audience for being so engaged today. I've really enjoyed our chat, and thank you.
No problem. And thank you so much. I've enjoyed the webinar. So thank you to everyone, and thanks for the engaging questions.
We'll hopefully chat to you again sometime soon. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your afternoon. Thank you, Caryn.
Bye all.